What's up, YouTube? KidMoto22 here, coming to you today with a comparison of my Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing versus the old Shield I had, which was the Harley-Davidson Wind Splitter. So let's get after it. Welcome back, YouTube. KidMoto22 here. So today we're going to do a bit of a comparison, and I'm going to compare my current Shield, which is the Memphis Shades Road Warrior, to the old Shield that it replaced, which was the Harley-Davidson Wind Splitter. I have two essential criteria that I use for this evaluation to determine, I guess, which one was better suited for my purposes. And those two things are aesthetics, so the looks, and functionality, which is how well it performs. So I'll talk about the Wind Splitter first, since that is the Shield I no longer have. And then I'll talk about the Road Warrior, and then I'll compare the two together. So the Wind Splitter was the first Shield I got on my bike. I got it when I purchased this bike because I knew how I was going to be using the bike, and I knew that I wanted some wind protection. And I was not very clear on the direction of mods I wanted to go with my bike. And so I picked up the Wind Splitter because I knew it would fit my bike. I liked the way that it looked more so than our traditional kind of tombstone shaped windshield. So that's the first Shield I went with. I put about 5,000 miles on that Shield last season, and I would say that it fit the needs for me for last season perfectly. So I'll talk about the two criteria, and those two criteria again are aesthetics and functionality. So I'll focus on the aesthetics of the Shield first. So the Wind Splitter Shield has kind of a swooped back appearance, different than a regular tombstone, so it kind of swoops back towards your bars. And it is a vented Shield, and the vent is adjustable, so you can open and close the vent and tip the vent however you like. So from a aesthetic standpoint, I like the way that that Shield looked again versus a normal kind of tombstone shaped Shield. Even though it had that kind of tombstone appearance, it had kind of the swept back look. So to me, it was much more aesthetically pleasing than the traditional kind of straight up tombstone style of windshields. I really liked the blacked out appearance of that Shield a lot. So it really fit, you know, my idea of, you know, not having really any, you know, kind of bright. I like the dark, you know, kind of the darker shields versus a clear Shield. Now, the negative on the aesthetic standpoint is on the side of the Shield, the connectors that went down the fork leg are all chrome. And anybody that knows me and knows my channel knows I'm not a fan of chrome. So that was a huge negative for me. It was a huge negative, in fact, not just a little bit, it was kind of a lot, because that chrome went down the fork leg, and the fork legs on this bike are all blacked out. So to me, it didn't make any sense that they sold that Shield, an all blacked out Shield like that, without options of blacked out hardware. Which I found that to be really interesting, because the actual hardware on the face of the Shield was not chrome, that was all black. So why the hardware on the Shield itself, on the connecting portion to the bike, was chrome? I don't get it. I mean, I understand maybe chrome might fit more applications than the special versions, or you know, that kind of stuff, but they should have offered the hardware in a blacked out version. And yes, I could have gotten it powder coated, but I did not. So, and that was, you know, for the biggest reason is that I decided to change out that shield and that I wasn't going to be utilizing it anymore. And so I knew that blacking out that hardware would have been just a waste of money. So aesthetically, the looks were better than a traditional shield, and that was certainly the positive to that shield. And the negative would have been that the shield had, you know, some chrome bits on it that I was really not a fan of. And then so let's get to the function of the shield. So functionally, the shield itself was 16 inches tall. I'm 6'3", so 16 inches still provided, with the swoop back style of that shield, still provided some buffeting on my helmet. But I've always been a little bit more concerned with getting the wind off of your body. So you'll have to check Harley's website because I don't remember all the exact specs of the shield, but suffice to say, it was 16 inches tall, and it did its job getting the wind off my body. It also was nice and wide, so it went across kind of the width of the bars, and it really did a good job keeping the wind off of my body. Now, the other thing functionally about the shield that I really liked is that it did have the vent in it. So if I was riding when it was really, really hot, I could open that shield and get nice airflow to my body. That shield was also, or that louver, I guess, or you know, the adjustable, I guess, I don't know, wind louver, whatever you want to call it. It also allowed for it changed the position of the air bubble that's created behind having a shield in place. So when I adjusted a little bit, I could also change kind of where the wind was flowing up over my helmet, and that was kind of nice. So it was from that perspective, that was certainly a plus to the functionality of the shield. So having a wide shield and the height fit, you know, kind of my purposes. Now the negative on the functionality of the shield is that when they put out this shield, different from some of the other connection points to the bike and some of the other shields that they have, this shield had the docking hardware that you bought to use it, and the shield just sat in the docking hardware and kind of just pushed into place. So it really was the pressure of the wind and everything that kept it firm on your bike. There was nothing that snapped into place, and so really if you wanted to take that shield off, you could just grab it by the top and peel it right off. So I mean, on and off, very, very easy. But that makes me feel a little bit uneasy. What if I was traveling in really bad weather, had a really severe crosswind, or say a really severe tailwind? You know, would that have caused that shield to move around? You know, I don't know. When I did take it on my long ride down to MMM, I didn't necessarily feel like I was going to lose the shield, but it really didn't give me a lot of comfort that that shield wasn't going anywhere. And one thing I did notice on that ride is riding for a long period of time, it did vibrate a little bit. So that shield did have, you know, some movement in it, which, you know, led me to believe maybe it wasn't as solidly mounted as it might have felt. So that I had to chalk up that as a negative, because I just didn't feel like that shield was very solidly mounted. So that gives you the functionality and the aesthetics of the Harley-Davidson Wind Splitter. So to kind of recap that, you know, my negatives were the chrome and the mounting hardware. My positives were I like the color and the shape of the shield, and that it wasn't like a traditional kind of tombstone style shape. So those are the positives and negatives of the wind splitter, and the venting system that allowed for that adjustable air bubble and to get some air to your body. So that's what I thought of the wind splitter. So like I said before, I rode the wind splitter for about 5,000 miles last season, and having put some miles on my bike, and then getting into this season for mods, I was much more comfortable with the modding direction I was going to be going on my bike, and specifically what I was going to do with the front and what I was going to do with the bars. And so because I knew that I was going to be changing out to T-bars at some point, and there was some other kind of design features associated around, I guess you'd call it that performance bagger look, that I really like. I knew that that swooped back shield wasn't going to work for me, and some of the other things aesthetically about that shield I knew that I wasn't going to go with, and so I opted for the Memphis Shades Road Warrior that you see here. So let's focus on the two categories that I talked about before, which is performance and aesthetics. And so the first thing is I'll focus on the I guess it's functionality is kind of what I said, and aesthetics. So I'll talk about the aesthetics first on this one. So the aesthetics are something that I really like. I like a fairing look more than I like a windshield look. So that really changes the look of the front end of the bike. The bike is you can see more of the fairing and less of the headlight nacelle, where with the windshield you can see more of the headlight nacelle. And so that gives me the kind of flexibility around what you can do with a fairing, where a windshield was just that black color. I can have this color painted or color matched to the bike, which I will probably do at some point again, which just gives me a little bit more flexibility in my modding and kind of some of the looks that I'm going for with the bike. So like I said, kind of a big win for me was aesthetically. I like the look of a fairing much more than I like the look of the windshield. The next thing is the docking or the mounting hardware. So the docking hardware for this is all black. You can get it in chrome. So they have options. I opted for the all black mounting hardware and the all black docking hardware, which again I think is a huge plus to these shields that Memphis Shades puts out, because you have the option of doing either mounting hardware, black or chrome, so you can really match the aesthetics of what you're going for on your own personal bike a little bit better by having those two options. So the docking hardware was really aesthetically exactly what I was looking for. So I guess aesthetically that kind of sums up the aesthetics of it. It's a fairing style look, which is what I wanted, and had the docking hardware coming in black, which is was an added plus for me. So functionality of the Road Warrior, it provides the wind protection that I am comfortable with. Does it provide as much wind protection as the wind splitter? We'll get to that in a few minutes. So it provides the wind protection that I like. It flares out at the bottom. Hopefully you can kind of see here, it flares out at the bottom to still provide adequate wind protection to my body and my trunk. And in terms of the shields, that's where functionally you have a ton of options, which is really great. So you can change it to I think they have like 3-inch shields, 5-inch shields. I mean, they have a ton of different options on the shields. I went for the 15-inch shield is what I have here, because I also wanted it in the dark smoke. So I have the 15-inch shield, and it covers pretty much all of my needs for what I have here. They also have shields that have built-in vents in them, so you can get a little bit more airflow behind the shield if you want, but it still provides great wind protection. So from a functionality standpoint, it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it works good. The other thing functionally that I like about this is that on the docking hardware, there's actually pieces on the hardware that snap into the docking hardware. So if you stand in front of the shield and you pull back, where the wind splitter, you can pull it right off. You would not be pulling off the Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing, because it's permanently in place unless you unsnap the docking hardware, which still allows you to unsnap it and pop it off. Literally takes seconds. So removing it doesn't really take any longer than the wind splitter did. So if you want that no shield look, you can certainly do that, but it takes just a couple more seconds maybe than the wind splitter, but it's a lot more solidly mounted. And so when I am at high speeds, there doesn't seem to have that feel of this thing moving around as much or being affected by the wind. So that would be the you know, kind of the functional part of it. So I guess that covers the aesthetics and the functionality of the Memphis Shades Road Warrior. So when I put this on and I did my install video, I had a comment on my video, and one of the people that commented on my video challenged me to do an honest review of the windshield versus the Road Warrior fairing. And so I'm going to make my attempt to give a fair and honest review, you know, that I'm not just following a trend or a fad, that I'm giving a fair and honest review, and full transparency, I was not sponsored by Memphis Shades at all for this fairing. I purchased it just like anyone else would, and I wasn't sponsored for the wind splitter that I had either. So I will give my fair and honest review of the two, you know, of comparing the two together. So I gave you my pros and cons of the Harley-Davidson Wind Splitter. I gave you my pros and cons of the Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing. So I'll start with the Wind Splitter, comparing the two and the pros and cons and which one in my opinion wins the day. So functionality, which one provides the best wind protection? Straight out of the box, if I was to compare the setup I have right now with this windshield height and the fairing versus straight out of the box the wind splitter wins. The wind splitter provides better wind protection straight out of the box. Now, the caveat to that is this: I have an option, and I'm going to use that option to have a variety of different windshields for this one. So while this shield that I have on here fits 90% of the applications that I need it for and how I ride basically most of the time, one of the things I do like to do is go on long trips. And so on a longer trip, I would opt for a larger shield. So I'm going to do that for my trip down to MMM. I'm going to make sure that I have the 17-inch shield, which is just going to provide me better wind protection for that longer trip. Now, I don't know quite yet. I'm getting a larger shield, whether I'm going to go for a tinted version of that shield or if I'm just going to go for a straight clear version of that shield. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to opt for at this point, but I do know that I'm going to get the taller version of that shield. That's going to provide me the additional wind protection. So again, honest review straight out of the box with this setup versus the wind splitter. The wind splitter wins for straight wind protection. Now, the next part of functionality is how they attach to the bike. The wind splitter not having a connection to the bike that is, you know, I guess connected, that it's just kind of sitting on the mounts and can be virtually just pulled off in a parking lot or whenever. and the Memphis Shade actually has clips that snap into place. I have to give that one to the Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing. The mounting hardware, the docking hardware, I've had two of them now. I had one on I had a Gauntlet fairing on my Sportster, and I have the Road Warrior fairing on this bike, and both sets of docking hardware spot on, perfect fitment every time, snaps right into place, does exactly what it's supposed to do. So and it's solidly mounted in place. So for me, the second portion of the functionality test goes to the Wind Splitter. So goes to the Road Warrior fairing. So I have functionally better protection with the Harley. So I had better wind protection with the Wind Splitter, but I have better mounting hardware with the Road Warrior fairing. So from a functional standpoint, it's a toss-up between the two. So the next thing is aesthetics, the looks of how it looks on the bike. And this is a, straight up personal thing. What's your preference? Do you prefer a fairing? Do you prefer a windshield? Do you prefer neither? So for me, this is where the Road Warrior takes it completely hands down. I like the look of a fairing much more than I like the look of the Wind Splitter windshield and or a tombstone shaped windshield. I was always one of those people that was actually never a really big fan of windshields in general, but after using one for a period of time and seeing what an amazing difference it makes for your ride, how much more enjoyable it is, how much less beat up you are by the wind, how much wind protection they actually provide you, how much warmer you can be in cooler weather because you're not getting blasted by that wind. I've been sold on wind protection from that standpoint, and having either a fairing or a windshield. I will probably always ride with some form of that now forever, because it's just such a better experience and allows you just to be able to do more in your ride. From an aesthetic standpoint, like I said, the Road Warrior fairing just really is a better piece of equipment for me and the looks that I like and what I was going for in the mods on my bike. It fits the design of how I want my bike to look, going for that kind of performance bagger look. It goes with the T-bars a lot. It's a much better setup with these kind of handlebars, and so for me, the Road Warrior fairing hands down gets it from an aesthetic standpoint. So the straight up head-to-head comparison functionality, they were kind of a toss-up, with the Wind Splitter, Harley-Davidson Wind Splitter really do straight up out of the box providing better wind protection. But I would argue that I'm going to be able to achieve that same level of wind protection with some flexibility in my options and getting a taller shield that I would use, that I would still really enjoy and use it for my long rides, but I could take it down and use the smaller shield, which would be the one I would use 90% of the time and would be my preference from an aesthetic standpoint anyway. And so that kind of covers, that thing, that part of it. So head-to-head, Wind Splitter versus the Road Warrior. The Road Warrior wins, obviously, because that's the one I'm running on my bike. And I think that, again, there's some of it that's personal preference, but keep in mind, for anybody that is comparing these, I made the biggest decision on mine based on aesthetics and how I wanted my bike to look, and I was going to be willing to work around the wind protection and the functionality of that, thinking that the Wind Splitter really does provide a bit better wind protection. So there you go. There is my head-to-head Wind Splitter versus Road Warrior. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, if you like what I'm doing and you want to be notified when I put out new videos, you gotta hit the subscribe button down here. And to note, I do have an install video of the Memphis Shades Road Warrior, and I'll put a link for that right up here. And know this, I'll do another review before the end of the season, before the snow flies. I'll do my end of the season review of the Road Warrior. I'll talk about the new shield that I'll get for MMM, so that you have a really good idea of what it looks like when I've ridden it for a full season, when I've put all kinds of miles on it. I will probably end up with about the same number of miles, maybe a little bit more this season than last season, doing more two-up riding with my wife. And so we'll have a much better idea of a long-term review at the end of the summer of this shield. So I appreciate y'all coming out. This is Kid Moto. I'm out.